people, and welcome to the Counterfactual Stories YouTube channel. There has been three tournaments in total, USSR and Russia versus the rest of the world, and in this episode we will talk about them. Before we start, don't forget to press subscribe button. First two tournaments, USSR versus rest of the world, was in 1970 and in the 1984, and one match Russia versus rest of the world was in 2002. The USSR team won the first two matches and the rest of the world team won the third match. The first two matches were between a team from the USSR and a team of the players from the rest of the world. The third match between Russia and the rest of the world was the first to occur after the breakup of the Soviet Union, which meant that some countries that had been in the USSR for the first two matches were now on the rest of the world team. In all of the matches, the teams consisted of 10 members plus some substitutes. In the first two matches, the teams were arranged in order from board 1 to board 10, and each member for one team played 4 games against his equivalent on the other team. In the third match, each player played a game against 10 different members of the other team, a Scheveningen system match, with a faster time control than the first two matches. As the 20th century entered its final third, it was already apparent that the Soviet Union has raised chess standards to a level to which other nations could only aspire. The USSR had produced an uninterrupted line of world champions stretching from 1948 to 1970. Since its earliest participation, the USSR had completely dominated team chess events such as the Chess Olympiad and European Team Championship. So pronounced was the gulf between the Soviet national side and their closest competitors, as sterner challenge was required to gauge the full extent of their supremacy. Such a challenge presented itself in 1970 when Max Uwe, the president of FIDE at that time, announced a match to pit the USSR strength against the collective might of the rest of the world. If the Soviets saw it as an opportunity to crown their glory, then the World Camp were equally determined to show that emergence of Bobby Fischer as a prospective world champion was symptomatic of a more widespread shift in the power base. Although the Cold War dictated the political mood of the era, players from the Eastern Bloc, which was politically dominated by the Soviet Union, participated on the rest of the world side in both matches, notably from Hungary, and in the first match also from Czechoslovakia and Eastern Germany, together with players from the Western Bloc and from non-aligned and neutral nations like Yugoslavia and Switzerland. The first match occurred in Belgrade from March 29 to April 5 in the 1970 and was billed as the match of the century, USSR versus the rest of the world. 10 team members played 4 games against their opposite number. 2 reserves could be utilized to fill in on any board at the direction of the team captain. Max Uwe was the captain of the rest of the world team, and he announced the order of team's players. For the first time, Arpad Elo's rating system was used to determine seeding and board order, except in the case of Larsen and Fischer. Larsen could not accept that Fischer's rating made him the World War I, when Fischer's recent period of inactivity was contrasted with Larsen's recent successes. After many negotiations, and just as the developing disagreement appeared to be endangering the match, Fischer surprisingly agreed to step down to board 2. The lineup was announced by Uwe well in advance of the match. At the time of the match, many people in Belgrade speculated that the order of USSR players seemed as if it were arranged so that they would play against opponents with whom they had a history of beating. For instance, ex-world champion Mikhail Botvinnik was below Efim Geller and Mark Taimanov. The lineup matched Taimanov against Wolfgang Ullmann, whom he used to beat as he liked, and Botvinnik against Milan Matulovic, who admitted to having a Botvinnik complex, not playing well against him. People also questioned Paul Keres being on board 10 and wondering if his opponent, being Borislav Ivkov, had something to do with it. These suspicions were printed in Belgrade newspapers, and the Russians replied with their reason for their team selection. Current world champion Boris Spassky must be first, and his predecessor Tigran Petrosyan must be second. Next comes Viktor Korchnoi, who played in the candidates' final match. Next came four players: Lev Polugaevsky, Geller, Vasily Smyslov, and Taimanov, who earned the right to play in the next interzonal because of their place in the USSR Championship. The last three places were given to players of special merit: Botvinnik, Tal, and Keres. The first reserve was Leonid Stein, who placed sixth in the USSR Championship, just behind those going to the interzonal. The second reserve was David Bronstein, who once played in a World Championship match against Andrich. Once played in a World Championship match. On paper, the match looked daunting for the world team, as they were up against 5 world champions and a number of other players who had achieved good results in candidates tournaments. However, a terrific display of defiance from the world's top four boards almost tipped the balance, and in the end, it was only the Soviet strength in depth that won the day, by the narrowest of margins. Lajos Portiš contributed a plus score for his side, but he incurred the wrath of Fischer when in the last round he inadvertently conceded a draw to Korchnoi by threefold repetition in a warm position. The game was regarded by many as crucial in determining the final match result, since the match would have been tied if Portiš had won the game. The rest of the world team were also hindered by Samuel Reshevsky being unable to play his final round game against Smyslov because it fell on the Jewish Sabbath. His replacement, Friedrich Olafsson, was defeated. The match was refereed by Božidar Kažić, and each participant received a fee of $400. Fischer won a car for making the best results with the world team. Two additional reserves, David Bronstein and Klaus Darga, were not required. Mikhail Tal verdict: we won, but there are some reasons for concern. Why are the foreign players making faster progress, at least in outward appearance? Why is the average age of our opponents lower than that of our national team? Why was there only one really strong chess tournament in the Soviet Union during the last years? Let's talk about individual scores. Spassky at that time had ELO 2670 and score 1.5 out of 3. Stein 2620, he lost in the round 4. Then Petrosyan 1 out of the 4, Korchnoi 1.5 out of 4, Polugaevsky 1.5 out of 4, Geller 2.5 out of 4, that was good result. Smyslov 2.5 out of 4, also Taimanov 2.5, Botvinnik 2.5, Tal 2 out of 4, and Keres 3 out of 4. That was 20.5 in total. Other side, rest of the world, Larsen 2.5 out of 4, Fischer 3 out of 4, Portiš 2.5 out of 4, Hort from Czechoslovakia 2.5 out of 4, Gligoric from Yugoslavia 1.5 out of 4, Reshevsky 1.5 out of 4, Olafsson lost in the round 4, Ullman 1.5 out of 4, Matulovic 1.5 out of 4, Najdorf 2 out of the 4, and Borislav Ivkov 1 out of 4, in total 19.5. Second match was like 14 years later in London in 1984, and also was called Match of the Century. Played at the Isle of Dogs. The match only took place thanks to a last-minute rescue package when sponsors withdrew from the previous wanted venues of Belgrade and then Rome. The London bid was made possible thanks to the efforts of Raymond Keane, the London Dockland Corporation, the British Chess Federation, and wealthy co-sponsor, Indonesian businessman Hassan, who wished to be named as a captain of the rest of the world side. The format followed that of the previous 1970 match. This time the teams look closer to equal strength, the average elo grades being almost identical. Korchnoi had by now swapped sides following his defection to the west, and this was just one conceivable reason why Moscow, the logical home and away choice for the rematch, was not put forward as a venue. There was a great deal of antagonism between Korchnoi and the Soviet authorities. Mr. Hassan wisely handed over executive captaincy duties to Lubomir Kavalek, while the Soviets employed Grandmaster and a psychologist Nicholas Krogius in the same role. The chief arbiter was Robert Wade. For the both side, Portish has been insulted by the offer of board 7 and refused to play. Spassky had only just left USSR to move to France and felt it would be overly painful to line up as an opponent to his old friends. Hort simply had other commitments. Bent Larsen and Korchnoi were the other veterans present on the world side. Meanwhile, USSR newcomers Karpov and Kasparov threatened to the top half of the USSR side, an area of weaknesses in the previous match. The veterans Stahl, Smyslov and Polugaevsky participated once and again, turned in respectable performance. Petrosyan was absent through illness, but the solid Yuri Razuvaev disputed admirably. The World's Miles and Torre restored some pride on the both boards, but the real damage was done on board 6, where rampant former world junior champion Beliavsky could not be contained by the combined efforts of Sierivin and Larsen. Some observers believe that Seiravan had foolishly been preferred to the higher-rated Walter Brownie because he had more glamorous image. Let's talk about individual results. Board 1, Anatoly Karpov, rating 2,700, 2.5 points, also 4 rounds. Garry Kasparov also. Lev Polugaevsky played only 3 rounds and scored the 1 point. Vladimir Tukmakov also was on board 3 as a substitute and made half point. Then Vasily Smyslov and Tukmakov 1.5 point, but they played only two rounds. Rafael Vaganian 1.5 out of 4, and Beliavsky on board 6, 3.5 out of 4. Tal standard 2 out of 3. Yuri Razuvaev 2 out of 4. Oleg Romanishin he didn't play, actually he lost in the round 4. And Andrei Sokolov on the board 10, only 1 out of 3, in total 21 points. Rest of the world, board 1, Ulf Andersson 1.5 out of 4, Timan 1.5 out of 4, Viktor Korchnoi 2.5 out of 4, Ljubomir Ljubojevic from Yugoslavia 2 out of the 4, Zoltan Ribli from Hungary 2.5 out of 4, Jase Servan he lost in the round 1 and round 2. Bent Larsen only half points out of 2 games. John Nunn 1 out of 3, not bad. Robert Hubner from West Germany with the elo score of 2,620, 2 out of 4. Tony Miles 2.5 out of 4. Eugenio Torre from Philippines 2 out of 3, in total 19 points. And last, third match in Moscow in 2002. It was held in the middle of September, and it was this time billed as the match of the new century or the match of the 21st century. If the event were to be more media and sponsor friendly, some drastic formal changes were required. Out of favor was the idea that combatants paired up only with their opposite number and engaged in a lengthy psychological war of attrition. This might have appealed to the chess purists, but did nothing for the casual observer or thrills and spills-hungry journalist. Furthermore, in order to make chess a viable spectacle sport, it was widely believed short time limits and spectacular, rapid finishes were necessary elements. Then there was the difficult task of getting most of the planet's elite players in the same place at the same time. A lengthy tournament might discourage some from attending at all. The finalized arrangements appeared to successfully cover all the bases. A 10-player, 10-round, 7-inning system format with a 25 minutes plus 10 seconds increment time limit. This could be compressed into just 4 days with 2 or 3 rounds played each day. In terms of team selection, the intervening breakup of the Soviet Union had precipitated some significant changes. This time it was Russia versus the rest of the world, and players from the remainder of the Union fulfilled the eligibility criteria for the rest of the world squad. It seemed at first that this would facilitate an unstoppable world team, but on closer inspection it was not so clear. Russian world champions and the 1984 USSR team survivors, Garry Kasparov and Anatoly Karpov, were to be joined by 2 more exclusive K Club members, world champions Vladimir Kramnik and Alexander Kalifman. With the further addition of 3 former champions of Russia, Alexander Morozovich, Petr Svidler and Alexander Motyev, and 2 more players with L rating in excess of 2,700, Evgeny Bareyev and Alexander Grishchuk. Things were looking decidedly brighter than might have been expected. Indeed, the average L rating of 2 sides were separated by only 1 point, and so a close contest was in prospect. The world team had most of their first-choice players available, except for absence of Michael Adams and Veselin Topalov, who would have been automatic picks. The inclusion of ex-Soviets Ilya Smirin, Vasily Ivanchuk, Boris Gelfand, Alexei Shirov and Ruslan Ponomaryov, however, appeared to compensate well for any losses. Each side was allowed 2 substitutes who could fill in anywhere, provided they did not play anyone more than once. These were Sergei Rublievsky and Vadim Zvyagintsev for the Russians, and Vladimir Akopian and Zurab Azmaiparashvili for the rest of the world. The outcome was finally balanced the most of the match, the rest of the world side just pulling away for a comfortable win in the last 3 rounds. In seeking to identify poor performance on the Russian side, it is noticeable that by end of round 3, none of the 4 Ks had scored a single win. Kasparov in particular looked out of sorts, losing to Judith Polgar for the first time in some 20 encounters. Motyev and Zvyagintsev looked out their depth. There were, however, some sterling performances from the rest of the world team, none more so than Shirov, who scored 7 out of 10 for a performance rating of 2,865. Rajabov, too, the youngest and lowest rated of the contest, produced some sparkling chess and contributed a solid 5 out of 10. Here is a comprehensive route of Karpov's Queen Indian defense. We will postpone that and we will talk about individual scores. Rest of the world, Akopian 1 out of 3. He won over Kasparov, as I can see here. Anand, he almost drew all his matches, except Motyev and Zvyagintsev, 5 out of 9. Boris Gelfand 6 out of 10, Chucky 6 out of 10, Leko 5.5 out of 10, Judith Polgar only 2 out of 7, not bad, Shirov 7 out of 10, Nigel Short 3 out of 10. So that was not so bad. That would be all for now. Don't forget to press subscribe button and see you very soon. Bye.